The air outside Heathrow was thick with fog, the kind that clings to windows and blurs the world into a hazy watercolor. Inside the private lounge, Prince Harry stood alone near the glass, his reflection faint and ghost-like against the backdrop of the runway. In his hand, a single white envelope, sealed with red wax, bore the mark of Clarence House. It was from William. He hadn't opened it yet. His flight back to California was minutes from boarding, but something in him refused to move. A part of him was still stuck in the shadows of Balmoral stone halls, where his father's voice had sliced through the air like a blade. "She is not worthy," Charles had said, eyes cold and unflinching, and that was that. The door slammed behind him, not just physically, but symbolically. Whatever thread had once connected father and son had finally frayed to nothing. But William was a different story. 2 days before, Harry had stood before the white wreath at Windsor, daisies and pale roses, symbols of innocence and apology. 3 years late, but he was finally there, trying to say what couldn't be said. The crowd kept its distance, but the flashing cameras never missed. He didn't flinch, not even when the Daily Mail screamed its newest headline hours later, "Prince Harry's return, a bid for forgiveness or something more." The truth was messier. This wasn't a stunt, it wasn't a scheme, it was a man broken in places only family could break, trying to rebuild what had been burned down, by choice, by pain, by history. At Claridge's, the silence had followed him like a shadow. The chandeliered hallways, the whispers, the side glances. Even the staff bowed politely but carried distance in their eyes. He was royalty in name only now, an exile dressed in navy blue. And then the Well Child event. Normally his safe space, the place where brave children reminded him of purpose. But that night, it was anything but safe. She was there, Camilla. She moved through the crowd like smoke, trailing perfume and suspicion. When she finally reached him, it wasn't a greeting, it was a calculated strike wrapped in a smile. "What a surprise to see you here," she said, as though it weren't planned, as though she didn't already know every step he took. Harry held his ground. "I'm here to honor my grandmother," he said, and he meant it. But she wasn't done. "You should know better than to dream of reconciliation," she whispered. Every word hit like a scalpel. Sharp, clean, effective. That night, alone on the hotel balcony, Harry stared into the mists. The city below moved on, unaware. He took out his phone. The message was still there. "Brother, I'm in London. If you want, we can talk." No reply. Still, just silence. But then the next morning, an envelope arrived. Hand-delivered. No text, no preamble, just the red wax of Clarence House and William's handwriting. Harry didn't open it then. He didn't open it when he boarded the flight. He waited. Now, as the engines roared and the jet prepared for takeoff, he finally broke the seal. His eyes scanned the words, simple and unpolished. "Carrie, think carefully. We've endured too much pain, but I still believe this family can heal. When we meet again, let it be as family, not enemies." His throat tightened, not from sadness, not entirely, but from the flicker of something long buried, hope. And for the first time in years, Harry smiled. Faint, fragile, but real. The gray hills surrounding Balmoral were quiet that morning, but inside the castle, tension simmered like a storm behind closed doors. King Charles stood by the window, his hands clasped behind his back, watching the rain blur the landscape. The fireplace crackled, but it did little to warm the room. He hadn't slept. William's message still burned in his mind. "Please watch your wife. She's playing a dangerous game." Charles hated being cornered, especially by his own son. He'd spent decades preparing to wear the crown, mastering every subtlety of royal restraint. But nothing prepared him for the relentless warfare that had consumed his family. First, Diana, then Harry's departure, now Camilla's quiet maneuvering. The meeting with Harry had left scars. The request for Meghan's reinstatement was expected, but hearing it aloud reopened every wound. Charles didn't despise Meghan out of spite. It was fear. Fear of losing control, fear of further cracks in the monarchy. In Harry, he saw passion, rebellion, love. In Meghan, he saw fire too wild to contain, and in himself, regret he couldn't admit aloud. A knock broke his thoughts. An aide entered, hesitant. "Your Majesty, Queen Camilla is requesting a moment." Charles turned, his expression unreadable. Let her in. She entered with quiet grace, her purple coat draped over one arm, hair immaculate, perfume faint but assertive. "You've seen the article draft, I assume," she said, placing a folded paper on his desk. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp. It would have put an end to this back and forth. The public would see the truth. Charles didn't touch the paper. "Whose truth?" he asked. Camilla blinked. "The one we need to protect, the monarchy's?" "Yours." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "And what of William's truth?" He stopped the article. "He sent Harry a letter. Do you understand what that means?" She tilted her head, her tone suddenly brittle. "It means your sons are playing a sentimental game in a world that demands strength." Charles didn't flinch. "Or maybe it means one of them still believes family can survive the crown." Camilla's smile faltered, just for a moment. "You're letting emotion cloud your role." "No," Charles said quietly. "I'm trying to remember I'm a father, not just a king." Down the hallway, William stood in his private office at Clarence House, eyes fixed on a framed photo of him and Harry mud-covered, laughing after a rugby match. A different life, a different time. His phone buzzed. A new message from the editor-in-chief. Subject: "Your request fulfilled. No story will run." He exhaled slowly. One fire extinguished, but another burned. He didn't regret stopping Camilla's leak, but it had made his position even more precarious. He could feel it. The courtiers, the press, everyone expected him to take a side. But what if he didn't want sides? What if he just wanted his brother back? A knock. His aide entered. "The letter was delivered, sir." "Did he read it?" William asked. The aide hesitated. "Yes, at the airport, right before takeoff." He smiled. William closed his eyes briefly. That smile was all he needed, but just as he felt relief, the door opened again. This time, a different aide entered, holding a sealed folder. "Something you should see, sir." Inside the folder, surveillance photos from the charity gala. Camilla in conversation with 3 key press figures. One of them had passed the draft article before it was pulled. Another had ties to an anti-Meghan lobby group. William's jaw tightened. So it hadn't just been a leaked headline. It was coordinated, premeditated. Camilla hadn't just tried to damage Harry, she was playing chess across the entire board. He stood, his fingers curling into fists. So this is how it's going to be, he thought. A family already torn at the seams. Now one queen's ambition threatened to burn the rest to ash. The California sun poured through the tall windows of Montecito, casting long golden beams across the kitchen floor. Meghan stood barefoot, flipping pancakes with one hand while balancing a toddler on her hip. Laughter echoed from the living room, Archie chasing their dog, giggling like the world was made of light. Everything here felt normal, simple, safe. But Meghan's eyes flicked toward the clock. Harry was late. The front door creaked open. She turned. He stepped inside slowly, his shoulders hunched with exhaustion, eyes heavy but clearer than they'd been in weeks. His travel bag dropped with a soft thud, but he kept his coat on, his hand resting over the pocket where William's letter remained. "You're home," Meghan said softly. He nodded and crossed the room, resting his forehead against hers, breathing in the scent of syrup and lavender. "I am." She saw it before he spoke. Something had shifted. A wound reopened, yes, but there was a glimmer in his voice. Hope, however small. In London, Buckingham Palace felt colder than usual. Queen Camilla sat alone in her private tea room, a blank expression masking the anger bubbling just beneath. The article hadn't gone public, William had blocked it. But it wasn't the article itself that burned, it was the fact that he dared challenge her authority. She sipped her tea without tasting it. Outside the door, a conversation murmured between aides. One of them mentioned a royal family podcast being planned by Kensington Palace. Something informal, something personal, a soft rebranding. Camilla's lips curled. She saw the game now. William was trying to reclaim public affection through humanity, not hierarchy. It was dangerous. Not because it undermined the crown, but because it worked. She rose, her gown brushing against the Persian rug like a whisper. If the monarchy shifted toward emotion, toward reconciliation, she would become irrelevant. Her power wasn't rooted in sentiment, it was strategy, silence, survival. Across the city, Charles sat in the royal study, William across from him. The tension was quiet, like the calm before rain. "She nearly torched everything," William said, the folder now resting on the king's desk. "She crossed a line." Charles didn't speak for a moment. He stared at the photo of Camila beside him, framed in silver, then at the one beside it, side Diana, arms wrapped around two boys laughing in the garden. He finally looked up. "You were right," William blinked. "About what?" "She's playing a game I no longer have the energy to keep up with." A pause. "I told Harry to leave," Charles admitted. "I told him Meghan wasn't welcome. But I regret it, not because of her, but because I saw myself in him in that moment when he stood his ground for love." William leaned forward. "So do something, say something." Charles shook his head. "Not yet, but I will." Outside, London's rain began again, tapping gently against the stained glass windows, washing the city in gray. Back in California, Harry sat alone on the porch, watching the ocean roll beneath the cliffside. The air was salty and the sky stretched endlessly above him. He unfolded the letter one more time, the edges now worn. He wasn't naive. He knew one message didn't fix years of hurt, but it mattered. And now, as his children laughed inside and Meghan hummed in the kitchen, he realized something. He wasn't trying to return to the life he left, he was trying to build a bridge. Not to the palace, but to his brother. Maybe one day they'd cross it together. Not as royals, not as enemies, but as William and Harry, two boys who once held each other's hands beneath a sea of grief, searching for a way forward.